Welcome back, everybody. So here we are for the bonus episode for issue 2, and this one is probably not going to be quite as detailed as the first bonus material, but we'll go ahead and get started with what we do have in issue 2. A lot of it revolves around Hoth, as you can see here. This is from Empire Strikes Back. Chewie's working on the front of the Millennium Falcon when Han comes up and yells at him, not that part, the other part, and all that kind of fun stuff. So let's look at what we do have here in this issue. So this one talks a lot about the offensive and defensive modifications that have been made on the Millennium Falcon. Okay, so for the armament, we have two upgraded CEC, or the Carillion Engineering Corporation, AG-2G quad laser cannons, which we know about the quad laser cannons. Blastech AX-108 surface defense blaster, and two 4-missile Arakid ST-2 concussion missile tubes. So I'm guessing this surface defense blaster is the one that came down underneath the cockpit and started shooting at the stormtroopers in like episode 4. So for countermeasures, it's got the Carbonti jammer and the encryption module. Hull plating's dural alloy armor. Shield generators are the Torplex naval decks, Kuat drive yards, and Nordexicon 38. Sensor systems, the Saip Irol antenna, the Cyanar Fleet Systems pulse generator, and Fabrotech ANQ51 computer, the Fabrotech ANY20 transceiver. So it's got some upgrades there as far as that kind of stuff goes. Here we go. We have the hyperspace travel allows a ship to exceed the speed of light, in case you didn't know that. But let's see what else we got in here. The maximum possible, the speed of light, which is the maximum possible in real space. Although the galaxy spans more than 120,000 light years, entering hyperspace cuts journeys across it in a matter of hours or days. The first step is to plot the course using the navicomputer. Then, with the ship heading in the correct bearing, the pilot can engage the hyperdrive. The ship will accelerate so rapidly the passengers will see the stars ahead stretch out into streaks of light. Anyone looking at the ship from outside will see it disappear. Once in hyperspace, it is cut off from detection. So, of course, we know as of The Last Jedi that you can track ships through hyperspace. So, but that's, something new, which is definitely after these came out. So, as we all know, when Han rescued the mighty Wookiee from Imperial slavery, he swore a life debt to Solo. Chewie was as wise as he was bold and a fearsome warrior, a skilled pilot and expert mechanic. He was the perfect foil for Solo's smuggling career. After the two fell in with the Rebellion Alliance, he became the hero of the Galactic Civil War. So, got a little bit more talking about here. This part I found rather interesting. So, it was unfortunate that Han and Chewie began to rebuild the Millennium Falcon just before the Empire discovered the rebel hideout on Hoth. With the Imperial Strike Force on its way, Han and Chewie hastily wrapped up the job, but with snowtroopers flooding into Echo Base, Han had to fight off the Imperials with his anti-personnel blaster until the troublesome engines roared into life, racing out of the hangar and into orbit. The Falcon came under attack from the Imperial Star Destroyers and their TIE fighters. Then, with the shields failing, Han found that the hyperspace motivator was damaged. Unable to fight against the overwhelming opposition and unable to outrun the Imperials, the situation looked hopeless. Fortunately, the bold smuggler Haas at Fortunately for the bold smuggler, the Haas asteroid field gave him a chance to level the odds. So obviously, if you've seen Empire Strikes Back, you know all that. And so I mentioned this when, uh, well, some of this I think it was. No, this just talks about the parsec. So, um, so the whole doing the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs what has been under huge scrutiny from the beginning. But and this is, mind you, um, this is before the Han Solo movie or the Solo movie came out. So this is basically something that Lucasfilm was using as an explanation in the first place. So when Han wants to impress Luke Skywalker with the Millennium Falcon speed, he boasts that she made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. Some fans thought this must be a script writing error because a parsec measures distance, not speed. However, Han's claim was backed up by the theory that the smuggling route from the Kessel to Hutt space has to run around a curve to avoid being sucked into a black hole in the Maw cluster. Although the normal journey distance is 18 parsecs, the Falcon's upgraded hyperdrive is fast enough to take a more direct route. As George Lucas pointed out, the customized Navicomputer also enables her to avoid the hazards of the Maw. It has been calculated that the Star Wars galaxy cutting 6 parsecs off the Kessel Run saves the Falcon about 114 trillion miles, with an equivalent saving in journey time. Whether or not the explanation was invented as a means to justify the script, the logic of what Han says to Luke makes complete sense. So that's something that they've even kind of pulled in from uh, lots of different things as far as something that Lucas always kind of paid attention to. Um, so this here talks a lot about the instruments and all that kind of stuff. So it talks a lot about how the cockpit's offset, and it gives excellent field of view because of that, which I'm not sure why that would be, because it's still got part of the ship on the one side, and if the cockpit was towards the front, then you'd have excellent field of view from there too. Um, but it does talk about the fact that um, it does have dual controls set up for the cockpit, so either the pilot or the co-pilot can fly equally, and so I found that rather interesting. Um, One of the more interesting things, and it doesn't take a lot of convincing to realize this, but so it was based on the B-29 bomber's cockpit. So in keeping with George Lucas's desire for the Star Wars battles to have the realism of the action-packed World War II dogfights that inspired him, observers have noticed how much of the design of the Falcon's cockpit resembles the Boeing B-29 Superfortress bomber. Among the largest aircraft of the era, the B-29's advanced features include remote control, machine gun, turrets, and pressurized cockpit. Um, so this just talks a bit about that, and talks more about a little bit about the B-29, the most famous being the Enola Gay. Um, so you could say famous or infamous if you were depending on how you want to look at it. So this kind of breaks down what the is in the cockpit here. So obviously we have the transparent steel windows, and that all the windows are transparent steel. They're transparent steel. Um, the turn and bank indicator over here. We have the velocity indicator. Our display monitor. We have the weapons control is up in here, and the warning light, which that's what Luke points at and says, "What's that?" Landing gear controls and deflector shield controls. So the deflector shield controls are clear over here, which kind of makes sense because there's other times when if you're flying over here, it's hard to get to the deflector shields, the controls for that. So um, yeah, so that I thought that was rather interesting too. Uh, So now we get over to Hoth, and like I said, Hoth is what a lot of the information um, pertains to in this one. This is kind of the theme of this one. So, um, a little bit about the astrographical data. It's in the outer rim territories, which kind of makes sense. It's out on the beaten path. So it's the sixth planet from the sun, which makes sense because it's cold. It's in this shipping lane, which makes it not necessarily because it is in a shipping lane. It's not necessarily kind of out of the way or hidden or not known, right? So that's kind of important to know as well. It's part of the Crystal Passage, the old Carillion run, and it's 50,000 light years from the core, or 15,000 parsecs. So, and then a little bit more about it. Its diameter is 7,200 kilometers, which is equivalent of 4,474 miles. And if you remember from issue 1, the Earth was 12,742 kilometers, which is equivalent to 7,917 and a half miles in diameter. Obviously, it's frozen, and its gravity is slightly greater than the standard. So that's pretty interesting. And the rest of it just talks about that there's ice caves and all that kind of stuff, and there's not really much else there. One interesting thing is a lot of it was kind of a favorite for extreme winter sports adventurers. So and this talks a little bit about how they decided to the rebels decided to go to Hoth. And according to this, and I don't know if any of this has been changed since this came out or whatever, because I know they're doing comic books and that kind of stuff, and so the comic books are kind of rewriting some of the canon or whatever. But according to this, Luke for somehow he had crashed onto Hoth, and Han went there to rescue him. And when he sat down, he ran into an old smuggler gang that he knew, and but he wasn't friends with them, I guess, and so they wanted to turn him into the for the bounty for Jabba the Hutt, and so that was one of the things that you know probably prompted Han to want to try to get back and pay off his debt to Jabba, I would guess. But so that's what it talks about. Uh, the fact that that's how they found Hoth and decided to go there. It is remote, and it is not like it's not known, but it's pretty inhospitable. So kind of easy to believe that they wouldn't necessarily look there. So this part here I thought was rather interesting. It's more about how they decided to do the to make the snow and stuff. So for when they were doing the models, so it says for the scenes where models were used to shoot the action sequences with the tauntauns and the walkers and the probot, um, large miniature snowscapes had to be built. The loose snow that covered the surface of these sets was modeled by using dry powder, which was either an industrial baking soda or glass microspheres, also known as micro balloons. These microscopically small hollow spheres have a number of applications, including being used as a lightweight filler. Uh, they gave the most convincing snow effect, but meant that everyone had to wear protective masks on the set, uh, since both were the microspheres and the baking soda were severe irritants. So I thought that was kind of interesting, especially the glass microspheres. Never even heard of those things. Um, but um, this one here talks about the wildlife and more specifically the wampa. So the surprising range of creatures survived Hoth's climate, challenging climate, including easily domesticated tauntauns and the terrifying wampa. A giant wampa costume was made and filmed, but the physical challenge for the actor proved to be too great, and most of the original movie was shot using a hand puppet. When the special edition was made, some sequences were shot with an actor wearing a scaled down wampa suit in a smaller version of the set, which made the creature seem larger than life size. So, yeah, so when they did the special features, they actually kind of went back and updated that, and it wasn't all just, not sure what's underneath here, kind of making things bow up. So yeah, I thought that was kind of cool that they even did some instead of doing all digital effects, they did some normal special effects when they did the special features. So that was kind of interesting. And as you saw, these are what we were doing in issue 2. And then, but we have this interesting tidbit of info here. So so this is a model of what they built for the framework of the Millennium Falcon. So um, it says the Falcon set built for principal filming for the first Star Wars movie was at L Street Studio in 1975. They had to put it together in less than a week. The lack of time um, and the vast scale of the ship meant that only half of it could be built of wood and plaster. As there were no film plans for a sequel, oh, no, sorry, no firm plans for a sequel. The original set was scrapped, but when The Empire Strikes Back was greenlighted, it was obvious that the Falcon would have to be rebuilt. This time, it was decided that the set would be built like a real ship with a metal skeleton under the outer paneling. In 1977, ILM's model makers built a small scale model to act as a template for the full size metal frame. This was fabricated inside of a former flying boat hangar at Pembroke Docks in Wales, where local heavy engineering company, the Marcon Fabrications, cut and welded the huge pieces of box section steel to match the model. The giant framework was transported to L Street on a convoy of flatbed trucks and bolted together on site, where set builders went to work to form the outer skin of the hull. I found this especially interesting because if, as time goes on, this will look rather familiar to some of the framework that we are using in our model. That's obviously not exact, but and as you can see, this is the actual model because you can see the uh, without the glare, you can see the shelving in the background. So this is definitely the model, not the full scale set that they built for um, Empire Strikes Back to use. But yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting because they even have the ring and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty cool. And I think I mentioned it in the bonus material last time. But so you can see here, this was just the part of the Falcon that they built to for the set. And this again is the docking bay on the Death Star. So you can see they just have this edge of the mandible there, and the rest is just they use the what they call it the matte painting or whatever to finish off the other edge or whatever. But yeah, so just over half of it was built, and I'm guessing that it went together pretty quickly. So and then really the only other thing that it talks about here is um, so the original, and this is to when you're adding some of your details or whatever. So it talks about, as you can see, the turret on the original movie prop had an extra distressed application to the basic paint job that we have provided. This is optional, but if you wish to copy it on your own model, we will be showing you techniques to use. You may also notice some small extra details on the turret which are not part of the basic modeling. These will be provided later on in the build. So I'm guessing in some of these parts here, you'll get extra parts and stuff to add to it. But so yeah, I thought that was rather interesting. So that more or less concludes the bonus material of for issue 2. But one of the things I did want to show you guys, and keep in mind that I am recording this well after issue 2 was originally done. So, but I wanted to show you this because I know it's been kind of a concern for both myself and some of the viewers about the fact that the screwdriver was not magnetic. So there's a little trick that I learned a long time ago, and what I did was I actually made the screwdriver magnetic, and so um, and I also did this with one of my own screwdrivers, and I did this on my own because if you can see here, the one that comes in the kit is much more pointy, and as a result, it doesn't necessarily fit into the screws very well. So there might be times when I use this screwdriver instead because I think that it might actually fit into the screws a little bit better. Or maybe not. I don't think it's actually fitting in there at all. I guess I'll have to use one of my other ones. But yeah, so because I feel like it's just too pointy to really get the whole screw tip in there. So I'll get one of my other jeweler screwdrivers to fit in there and use that because that will help prevent a lot of these screw heads. You probably can't really see it, but a lot of these from getting stripped out if you use something that's not quite so pointy and that fits into the screw a little bit better. So I'll probably do that with one of my other screws. So anyway, let me show you this. So if you want to magnetize a screwdriver, all you need is a magnet. And I just got this thing around Christmas time, and it's something I've been wanting for a long time. So it's this dish, and it's used specifically for these types of applications when you have a lot of little screws or something. And it's got a magnet in the middle here. And so you'll see me using this more and more often because it's pretty handy. You don't have to worry about losing your having the screws go all over the place or whatever. But so it's got a magnet underneath here, and so to magnetize a screwdriver, what you do is you just kind of tap it right on this and pull it across, and you do this several times, and by the time you're done, and here's some screws here. You can see it does a pretty good job of magnetizing. I'm holding up 2 screws in this plastic bag, and it works pretty well. And I've only done it a little bit, a couple times with this one, and you can see that this one's not quite as magnetized. I haven't done it as many times, but it's strong enough that it'll still pick that up. So if you ever need to magnetize, particularly a little screwdriver like this, just find yourself a magnet someplace, and you could probably use like something off of your, a magnet off your refrigerator or something like that, and just do that with your screwdriver. Obviously, it works a little bit better, for these weaker magnets. Works a little bit better when you're talking about a jeweler screwdriver or a small screwdriver like this. If you're wanting to try to do that with a bigger one, you're going to probably need a much bigger and stronger magnet to make that happen. So just a little tip. And so, all right, I think we'll wrap that up here. Take care, everybody.